What's up guys? Today we're going to be talking about the Sony 20mm F1.8 G lens. I recently borrowed it from lensrenters.com, used it for about 2 weeks. I took it up on a trip to northern Minnesota, and in this video I pretty much just want to talk about the pros and cons of it. There's not many cons, and if I think it's worth the money. You can buy it for typically about $800 to $900. Sometimes you'll find it on sale on B&H and sometimes Amazon. But yeah, I'm not going to waste your time with some silly introduction or anything, so let's just get right into it. So first up, we're talking about the size and weight of the lens. So it's only about 13 ounces, which I think is about 370 grams. So decently lightweight, but it doesn't feel cheap. And size-wise, we're looking at about 3.3 inches, which I think in metric is 8.5 centimeters, I believe. So everything considered, with the lens hood removed, it's a pretty compact lens. For a G series lens, typically they're pretty big, pretty premium, but this one keeps its size down a lot, which I appreciate. Speaking of G series, if you've ever used any other G series lens from Sony, you know that the build quality is insane. It's made mostly out of metal. There's a lot of glass in this thing, it just feels great in the hand. Of course, with that being said, the accessories like the front lens cap, standard pinch cap, and the back lens cap, just a twisty cap, they're made of plastic, but I have only ever used a couple of lenses where they're not plastic, so that's fine. As far as the lens hood goes, that's plastic too, but it's pretty high quality. This thing isn't going to snap on you or anything like that, and I found it does the job at protecting the front element against damage, so that's good. And then for the other sealing, this thing does have a gasket around the lens mount, internal sealing, and then it also has the whatever chemical coating it is to keep liquids off the front element. When I was up on my Minnesota trip, I did take it out, during some light rain phase. Nothing too insane, but the camera and the lens definitely got a little moist, and they survived just fine. So yeah, in terms of build quality, I would definitely say this thing is built to last. I mean, it's a Sony G series lens, it's an absolute beast. Yeah, quick thing I do have to mention. It's kind of hard to explain, but when you move this thing, there's definitely something inside that shifts back and forth. I have seen this, other people saying this, so I think it has something to do with the focusing mechanism. So yeah, that does make it feel a little cheap, I guess, to be honest, but it's fine. Besides that, this thing is an absolute monster. So as far as the ergonomics and just, usability, the comfort of this lens, like I mentioned, it feels premium, but it's still pretty compact, which means, you can carry it around on your camera for a couple of hours and you're not going to get hand fatigue or anything like that. And then even if you do, it's so tiny that it fits in a bag just fine. I typically use the Peak Design sling, and my A7 III with this on it fits perfectly in there. I mean, there's plenty of space to spare, so yeah. And then on that subject, this lens does have an aperture ring, as you can see, and it's very nice and clicky. A lot of people prefer de-clicked aperture rings. I like clicked myself, but luckily Sony has thought about that. You can see on the side, there's actually a little switch where you can make it clicky and not clicky. So that's awesome. And then if you're the type of person who keeps your aperture on automatic, or you just prefer to control it from the camera, you can actually spin it to A here for automatic mode. It makes a nice satisfying click. Good stuff. And then besides that, there is a custom button on this side of the lens. Typically by default it is a focus hood button, but you can customize it to anything in the camera settings menu, which is fantastic. So yeah, on a day-to-day basis, just using this thing, handling it on your camera, feels amazing. I mean, it's a G series lens, of course it does. So yeah, next up, let's talk about image quality, because at the end of the day, that's what everybody cares about when it comes to a lens, so let's do it. So yeah, image quality. As you might expect, this thing is amazing. It is definitely one of the sharpest lenses I've ever used on my Sony camera. I think there might be some exceptions. I've used some Sigmas that are just like insane. But you can pixel peep at this thing from F1.8 all the way down to F22, and you can't see any softness. It's insane, like absolutely nuts. And then on that subject, it's not just pure sharpness that you have to think about. Obviously, like, does it handle distortion, CA, vignetting, that sort of thing. And yeah, it does a great job. Typically, with a wide angle lens, you have a good amount of distortion, but on this thing, thanks to it being like an actual Sony like first party lens, there's a lot of built-in correction in the lens, or in the camera, I suppose. So yeah, the distortion patterns on this are pretty good, honestly. You might see a little bit of strangeness when shooting straight lines like in architecture and whatnot, but typically for a wide angle lens, this thing is pretty damn good. And then going on with that, everything else, like, I could not find chromatic aberrations when I was shooting. Like, even when you take a picture of like a vehicle, like shiny metal, like in the daylight, typically you get some fringing. I saw nothing with this. It's nuts. And then same thing with vignette. There's a light vignette when you're shooting wide open, but that's easily fixed in post, or by stopping down even to just F2. And then finally, for lens flare, I shot this thing directly into sunlight many times, and the only thing I could get was a tiny little bit of ghosting, which, that's fantastic. And then going on from that, I guess the last thing to touch on in that like subject would be for astrophotography. The chromatic aberration performance in this is pretty good. At the edge of the frame, when shooting wide open, you'll see some slight stretching of stars and whatnot, but stopping down to f2.8 fixes that easily, and even then it's not that bad at f1.8. Yeah, and then bokeh for a 20mm lens is actually pretty good. Obviously, you're not going to get as good of bokeh as like an 85mm telephoto, of course, but thanks to the wide aperture on this and close focusing distance, actually, you can get pretty close up and get some pretty good background though. I put some bokeh like examples on the screen here somewhere, and you can judge it for yourself. So yeah, unsurprisingly, this thing is an optical beast. Like, the pictures that it takes are absolutely amazing. And yeah, last thing to touch on is going to be the autofocus system, which is unsurprisingly pretty good. So let's talk about that. So yeah, when it comes to AF, I mean, it's a Sony G lens. Obviously, it's fast, it's extremely precise. I have no complaints. When you use it with AFC, like subject tracking, or even IAF, it's snappy, super precise. Not much more I can say about that. For video shooters, the AF is completely silent, there's no focus breathing, so if you're into vlogging, which is what I'm doing now, except I'm obviously not using this lens for it, if you're into vlogging, this thing is an absolute beast. And then finally, when it comes to focus, if you prefer to use manual focus, the focusing ring is decently big, it's a little bit grippy, and it's not as good as like a dedicated manual lens, like a Voigtlander, I think that's how you pronounce it, but it's decently dampened. There's no hard stops or anything, but it's decently dampened. So if you're like shooting through glass or anything else that needs manual focus, I think you'll most likely be pretty happy with it. So yeah, who exactly is this lens for? I'd say 3 different kinds of people. Mainly, if you're just looking for a fantastic wide angle lens and you're not super concerned about price, this is probably going to be the move. Obviously, there's cheaper options, like I think the Tamron 20mm f2.8. I believe it's about $250, but obviously it's not going to come close to this. Beyond that, if you're an astrophotographer, this could be a pretty good choice, though if you're trying to shoot the night sky, I'd probably suggest just getting the Sony 14mm instead. However, if you're looking to casually dabble in astrophotography but you're mostly just looking for a good wide angle, this is still a good option. And then finally, I'd say the most target market for this is probably people trying to do video. This is a fantastic focal length for shooting yourself, and like I said, no focus breathing, super silent AF, everything like that. Like I mentioned, I'm currently borrowing this from lensrenters.com, and I don't want to give it back because the video that it shoots is just so good. But yeah, in any case, guys, that's pretty much the end of the review. I wanted to make it pretty easy and quick. If you're looking for that more detail, you can click the text link down below. Obviously, it's on the site. And then if you're just looking to buy it, you can click the link down below. Obviously, any purchase you make through the description directly supports the channel. I get a pretty tiny commission at no extra cost to you, but it helps support the channel and lets me do more of these honest reviews. So yeah, that's about it. If you like this video, feel free to like it. If you like this video a lot, feel free to subscribe. But yeah, thank you guys and have a great day.